Like this video says, I was loving this until I hated it. But I want to start with the positives because truly I was really into this for most of the runtime, and that is mostly due to Celine Song's direction. I believe this is her second feature that she wrote and directed. The first one came out in 2023, which I didn't see, but this is her second time, and it's mostly because of how she films the movie. There are a lot of long takes, whether it's kind of using a camera that's very still or it's using very slow pans, and it usually happens when a character is talking on the phone with someone or if two characters are talking to each other. I loved just like the stillness of it because it made it feel that much more real and personable, which makes a lot of sense for a movie like this because it is a film about relationships and modern dating. Being that it's a movie that has to do with relationships, I liked the commentary that it had on modern dating because I found it to be very truthful, and it pretty much is kind of like the, I guess, ugly truth depending on how you look at it. So Dakota Johnson is a matchmaker in this movie, and so she has a lot of different clients who have a lot of different types of preferences when it comes to dating. Some people don't want to date black people. Some people don't want to date liberals. People don't want somebody fat. People want people who are fit. People want people who are making over 200K a year. People have very specific requests and preferences, and they just don't want to lower their standards because, you know, people are people. And I liked that part of it because I found it very truthful. Okay, I have had not only conversations with girlfriends, but I've been around people who talk about dating and just all of the truth bomb, and I've just been around those conversations, and it is very true too. I mean, it sounds very shallow, I guess, but at the end of the day, we are humans. We are not perfect people. Sometimes we are shallow. You know, sometimes a guy is only want to date somebody who's 21 years old and they're like in their 40s. Sometimes a girl is not going to date a guy who is under 6 feet tall. That is the truth of it. And I like that this movie showed that because that is real life. I thought everybody was on their A game in this. For Dakota Johnson, I always kind of like wondered about, okay, is she actually a good actress or is she just like really pretty? But I think she was very good in here. She has this quality about her in this movie where it feels just very natural. I feel like I'm just watching her live, which is a compliment because it didn't really feel like acting. I feel like I was just watching. I thought Chris Evans was great and Pedro Pascal was great in this. I wish he was in it more. Now, part of the reason why I loved a lot of this movie was the pacing of it. I never felt bored with this, and sometimes that could be something that comes up quite a lot with films these days. They just feel like they're just taking too long to really get started. It's just too much dialogue that's just not really captivating me. But with this movie, I think because the topic is so relevant to our times and it interested me, I was locked in. Like, I was leaned in and I wanted to know what was going on in these people's minds and their relationships. Things can get pretty dark in this, I will say. Like, there, you know, trigger warnings for certain content, look them up. I don't want to spoil for you, but this is not a rom-com, and I think trailers are selling it as that. And I think you should know, if you haven't seen it yet, that this is not a rom-com. This is more of the heroine's journey. This is mostly a Dakota Johnson film, and I would say it's more of a drama that has some levity to it at times. I think it's also showing the painful process and sometimes the really real dangers that it can be when it comes to the dating world out there, you know, especially as a woman, which I hate to say it like that, and I hate that it is like that, but I think a lot of times men and women have to think about their safety in very different ways in certain scenarios, and one of those things is the dating world. So I did appreciate the movie for depicting that in this, because that moment I was like, damn, this is really heavy and kind of dark right now, but this is real. This is the type of reality that we need to think about. Like I said, I love the pacing of this, and I think it's interesting how Celine Song, it really keeps a very still camera, and it feels like moments are able to breathe, but it never feels like it's dragging because it never feels like time is ever wasted. Everything is useful. All the dialogue is really well acted. Before I get into the reason why I ultimately don't love this movie, I want to get into some of my mixed to negative. There are character decisions in this movie, which I will get into more later in the spoiler section, that didn't make any sense to me. So while I think the script is pretty good, it also has some major problems for me, and it mostly comes from the Dakota Johnson character. There are times certain actions of hers are very contradictory to what the character has said before earlier in the film. And because I found Dakota's character confusing. All in all, you guys, I think you should watch this for the outstanding performance and a really great direction and a mostly good script. And if you want to watch a movie that has these very powerful and truthful moments about the modern dating world, then I think you should go and watch it. If those topics interest you, go watch this. Okay, now time for my spoilery thoughts about the ending. Okay. So by the end of this movie, Dakota Johnson chooses Chris Evans. And for most of this movie, Dakota Johnson's character is very upfront about what she's looking for in her next relationship. She is looking for a man who has money. She's looking for a man who is a rich man. Now, that may sound superficial and shallow, but when you are given the background of this character, it makes a lot of sense for this character in this movie, because we are shown scenes from the past where her and Chris Evans are in a 5-year-long relationship and they are fighting about money, and you get the impression that this is not their first or last fight about money. And Dakota's character even says, like, this reminds me of my parents, meaning her parents had fights about money. And I think we all know in real life, in the real world, a lot of divorces happen because of what? Finances. I know there are people in my own family who that's how divorce has happened, because of finances. So I think it was something that was very realistic. And again, it made a lot of sense for the character, for her to seek that out in her next relationship, because we've seen what she's been through in the past. They gave us enough context. They did a good job of giving us the context so that we could understand the character as to why she thinks this way. She meets Chris Evans in the present time of the movie that takes place, and he is still a 37-year-old man who is still broke. He is very honest about that. He works at a catering job. He's a waiter. He's still trying to make it in acting. She knows this. He knows this. And then when Pedro Pascal's character, is about to propose and they're about to go on this Icelandic vacation that she's always been wanting to go to, she lets him know that she is not in love with him and therefore they cannot be together. Even though earlier in the movie, she says that love is easy. It's the rest of the stuff that's a business deal. So you give us a character who says love is easy and that it's a business deal. But then in the scene where she breaks up with Pedro, she says it is a business deal, but love needs to be on the table. Okay, if you want to try to sell me that she's been through some kind of evolution, whatever. I don't think the movie did a great job of showing that enough, because there just hasn't been really an example in the movie, in my opinion, that kind of makes Dakota realize, oh wait, I actually do need to be in love with my person. But whatever. If the movie had ended with Dakota not choosing either of them because she realizes he's rich, but I don't love him, and then she realizes, oh, Chris Evans, he's a great guy and I loved him once, but he still has financial problems, and that's really not going to be working for me because in our past relationship, he was broke and it always caused fights, then that's not going to work either. I'm going to choose neither of them so that I can go and find my unicorn. Because they use the term unicorn in this movie to describe this impossible fantasy guy. Now, if by the end she realizes, oh, my unicorn, what that looks like is a man who has a very good job and is able to pay for things, but I'm also in love with him. Bet. Like, I could have dealt with that kind of ending. But the fact that I think she basically quits her job by the end and she accepts him for his brokenness and says, oh, well, I can take care of myself. It didn't make any sense. So I am so upset that A24 and Celine Song dropped the ball in this movie. And I hope somebody is watching this review and is willing to explain to me why this ending worked for you, because it made zero sense. The character arc for Dakota Johnson, that ending for the journey that we saw made no sense. So I don't think that you can convince me, okay? And I'm upset because I thought everything else was so good. Even though her character was just kind of making confusing decisions and it was kind of wobbly, I could have forgiven it if by the end she chooses neither of them because she's looking for her own unicorn. That would have made sense because you've given us the context as to what kind of person she is because of her experiences. But then she chooses the broke guy and basically kind of gives up her job. Why? By the end of this, you have not convinced me, Celine Song, that these people are not going to break up again because of finances again. She's going to get upset, frustrated, resentful, and then they're eventually going to break up because he is broke. So how am I supposed to be convinced by the end that they are going to stay together? I'm not convinced. And I don't understand how anybody else who watches this movie is convinced that they're going to stay together and be happy and that she's going to be happy in this relationship. No, I'm not convinced. She should have chosen neither. Or like, I don't know, like maybe she did choose Chris Evans and then like years later she decided, oh well, I decided to try it again and then it didn't work again. So I actually found somebody who's actually my person, my unicorn, this guy who is not broke, has a job, has no roommates, and I'm in love with him. I'm upset because why can't we get that kind of movie that has that kind of ending? Why do we have to romanticize? And it's upsetting because I remember when this trailer debuted, all the girls on the TikToks were saying, oh my gosh, she's going to pick Chris Evans. She's going to pick Chris Evans because the girl in this movie always chooses her broke ex. And I was hopeful that because it's A24 that they were going to go with a different type of ending. And I don't know why. That was dumb. That was dumb of me to think better of Hollywood. They chose the fantasy dumb Hollywood ending. Oh my goodness. I'm so disappointed. And I think at the end, oh my God, I think giving this a 3 out of 5 is going to be too nice. But that's because I think it's really well performed and paced and everything else. But like, I can't, like, the ending of it gives a bad taste in my mouth. So I don't know. I don't know what to rate this. Maybe 2.5. I don't know if it matters. I'm upset. Anyway, I think that should be the end of my rant. Tell me what you think of the movie. I'm excited to talk to you about it, but keep it civil. Keep it civil. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I appreciate you. If you're liking the content, please subscribe, hit the like button, and I cannot wait to hear from you. I'll catch you guys next time.